Just days later, an internal memo revealed that the U.S. State Department had froze spending on foreign aid projects, excluding Israel and Egypt. In total, the U.S. spent some $68 billion last year on international aid. This change could affect everything from developmental assistance to military aid, humanitarian assistance, and it also risks cutting off life-saving services. Let's bring in now Krish O'Mara Vignarajah. She's the president and CEO of Global Refuge. That's one of the nation's oldest and largest refugee resettlement nonprofits. We know on Friday, actually, your organization received a stop work order from the U.S. government. Walk us through what that means.
Yeah, it seems like every day this week brought a new challenge. So on Monday, the administration had suspended arrivals and canceled travel bookings for already vetted refugees. And then, of course, on Friday, the administration did go further and directed resettlement nonprofits like Global Refuge to halt all services for all refugees who are already here in the U.S. And so that's obviously very difficult for us as we've tried to process and understand the implications of this. Just to give you one example, we have Afghan allies who risk their lives to protect our U.S. troops. They are here. We have always served them to help support them, to keep our promise to them, just as we have special immigrant visas, Afghan allies who are coming this upcoming week, next week, etc. And so we don't know how we serve them. How do we ensure that they aren't stranded at the airport, that they aren't homeless, that we can help their young children get enrolled in our schools? And so these are the challenges we're facing right now.
To what extent do you think the Trump administration fully understood the fallout here, that freezing this refugee program would also affect people like you mentioned, those Afghan citizens who did help the U.S. military during the war there and now obviously would face a threat from the Taliban after they took control?
Well, I guess we hope that this is just a matter of misunderstanding because certainly, programs like refugee resettlement, they are the gold standard in terms of how we vet individuals, families who have gone to a third country. They've applied through the United Nations. They have gone through extreme vetting. FBI, Department of Homeland Security, CIA, Interpol, they've waited their turn. And only when those applications have been processed have they come to the U.S. And so it's very difficult because, we heard from President Trump, even this morning, we heard from Vice President Vance that, they draw this line between legal immigration and other pathways. Refugee resettlement has always had bipartisan support. We've resettled 600,000 refugees under President Reagan. And so we hope that we will be able to restart refugee resettlement as quickly as possible.
Just to clarify some of the details, you mentioned that this move by the Trump administration affects refugees that are already here. Is that right? I mean, what will this mean for people that have recently relocated from another country?
Yeah, so these are refugees, as I said, they have waited a year or two, in some cases a decade. They've come to the U.S. Under the commitment we made to help them in those first 3 months through the State Department. And so for those families, when they start calling us tomorrow morning saying, look, we're here, you had promised to help us in terms of keeping a roof over the heads of a young family, I will be honest, I don't know how we answer that. Thankfully, we have the generosity of the American people, congregations who have supported us as the largest faith-based nonprofit. But, that support oftentimes is short-lived. And so I do hope we have answers for them.
President Trump, as we mentioned, he also ordered this 90-day pause in foreign development assistance and aid. It's hard not to ask, but, if the goal of this administration is to reduce the number of immigrants or refugees entering the country, could cutting off that kind of aid actually have the opposite effect?
It's such an important question because the irony of this all is that this work order, the suspension, it freezes aid to Central America, which has obviously been a major source of migration outflows. And we know this is one of the administration's top priorities. And so I do worry that this decision would be counterproductive to those goals, because obviously we have seen that addressing the root causes is a critical component of managing and controlling our border.
Just briefly, about 20 seconds left or so, but how confident are you that either of those decisions might be reconsidered by the Trump administration?
Well, look, I was at the State Department for a few years. I know that transitions take time. You need to get Secretary Rubio and his team in place. And so I do hope as they think through the implications of this, they are wielding, they are sweeping. It's emergency assistance to maternal clinics, clean water for infants, support for refugees who are here in the U.S., including our Afghan allies. And so I do hope a review will change course.
All right, Krish O'Mara Vignarajah, President and CEO of Global Refuge. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.